If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch. If neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
Welcome back, everyone, to New York Rangers hockey in the start of the 1993-94 season. Tremendous excitement here as we get set for the opening face-off.
And that excitement would never subside as the Rangers chased down a 54-year-old dream.
And cleared by Messier. The race is on. Messier gets to the puck. Moves in. Score! Kovalov takes it away with a nice play. Looks for Messier. He scores! What a play! Kovalov trying to take it away toward the net. Saved by Rooney. Rebound. Score! Yes. The Rangers win! Put this in your Ripley's Believe It or Not finishes.
Please welcome the 1994 National Hockey League All-Stars.
Mark Messier of the New York Rangers brings the Eastern Conference with a one goal.
Messier gets there. Messier's in. He scores on a beautiful backhander.
The New York Rangers are the National Hockey League's regular season champions.
And they are certainly the team to beat as the Stanley Cup playoffs begin.
Messier on the cut it. He scores. They love it in Rangerland.
The bigger the game, the bigger Mark Messier plays.
Speaking about loose puck, here's Messier short-handed. He scores.
Dagger the heart that is to the Washington Capitals.
Battle of the Hudson, the tunnel series, call it what you will.
The Rangers are not done yet.
No, they're not done, Gary, but they're hurting fun.
For the empty net, Mark Messier. Do you believe it? Do you believe it? He said we will win Game 6. He has just picked up the hat trick. And the Rangers have one more hill to climb, baby. But it's Mount Vancouver. The Rangers are headed to the final. Messier shoots. Score! Oh, baby! Messier! The waiting is over. The New York Rangers are the Stanley Cup champions! And this one will last a lifetime! No more closeness! This is unbelievable!
He was brought here to win a Stanley Cup. His mission is complete.
The Rangers' historic Stanley Cup charge elevated Mark Messier to hero status. While 1994 was the year Messier became a household name in the United States, in Canada, he had been revered for over a decade. But the roots of his greatness had been planted even earlier than that. Born in Edmonton on January 18, 1961, the son of Mary Jean and Doug Messier, Mark was the third of 4 children. Doug, his father, a rugged defenseman, was playing minor league hockey at the time, and many of Mark's early years were spent on the road.
The one year we lived in, I started the season, lived in Pittsburgh, moved to Indianapolis, moved to Cincinnati, finally got sold to Portland.
We traveled a lot, which was really fun because I think that contributed to us becoming a really close-knit group. We had friends when we moved to cities and whatnot, but because we traveled so much together and moved a lot, we became really close.
And it wasn't long before the Messier children learned their father's passion.
Certainly seeing your dad playing hockey, and like any other kid, you want to be like your father. So that was, for us, we just took to it naturally.
He and Paul both wanted to play so badly. They always wanted to go to practice. They played continuously for hours and hours in the dry. It didn't matter whether they had skates on or whether they had to play in the road or whether they were shooting the balls against and breaking the neighbors' windows or whatever.
Moving back to an Edmonton suburb when Mark was 7, the entire family had a role in his development.
I mean, my dad would be tied up with my brother playing junior hockey, and my mother would be the one that would be taking me to my games. And I mean, I could talk to her about the game just like I'd be talking to my dad.
By age 10, Mark had 5 seasons of organized hockey under his belt and years of sibling rivalry at home.
Sure, growing up we were fighting all the time and doing everything that most brothers and most families do, and my mom had to break up a few good ones, I guess.
And out of those struggles at home, a distinct personality began to emerge.
I just remember him as being the most intense player before a game I could ever remember.
His dad would bring him to our house and he would go in and play with my 1.5-year-old daughter. It was hard to believe the difference when he was playing, because when he played, then he forgot everything. He just would play with such intensity.
Throughout his teenage years, Mark matured physically, and with his father coaching him on local teams in Spruce Grove and St. Albert, he learned invaluable lessons about the game's mental aspects.
I think a lot of the things that I would have to say verbally to a team about their commitment to the game, their commitment to each other, I think there was a lot of that. I think that I always spent quite a bit of time trying to prepare teams for games. So when I walk in, I had a talk I wanted to talk to them about because it was a big game. And when I walked in, I looked around the dressing room, and I mean, everybody looked ready to go. And I realized then that Mark had already given a talk. And
by 1978, Mark was 17 years old. Standing 6 feet tall and 195 pounds, he physically dominated his competition. His age made him ineligible to play in the NHL, but the rival World Hockey Association was looking for young talent. And the Indianapolis Racers gave him a tryout.
We had controversy over that. We didn't. He was so young. He was only 17. I didn't want him to leave.
He could have stayed that year, but he was ready for another step.
My dad could sense the fact that he was becoming stagnant. He was just above what was happening there. He was becoming frustrated with his own players, which wasn't like him at practice. And so I think they just decided that they had to let him go.
Mark's first taste of pro hockey was a short one. After 5 games in Indianapolis, the Racers folded, but 2 weeks later he was back and playing for the Cincinnati Stingers. He went head-to-head with some of the best hockey talents in the world.
When he went to Cincinnati, I remember my wife and I went down just around Christmas time to see him play. So I looked in the blue line, there was Mark, he was playing center with Mike Gartner and Dave Forbes. And across from them was standing Dave Keon, Gordie Howe, and Mark Howe. I said to Mergen, I said, I'm not sure we did the right thing.
Mark scored only 1 goal in 47 games with the Stingers, and he never got the chance to improve on that total. In 1979, the WHA folded, and Mark became the 48th pick in that summer's NHL draft. In an ironic twist, he was chosen by his hometown Edmonton Oilers. He made quite an impression in the team's first training camp.
His energy, I think that was the first thought that everyone probably has of Mark. He played the same way that his personality was.
He was going to be a good player. You could see it right away. He had lots of fire in his heart. You can tell he's ready to start to boil at some point.
Darris now playing it back to Mark Messier. Right back, goal! Mark Messier hits on his first goal of the campaign.
But while Mark showed flashes in his first 2 seasons, he showed inconsistency as well.
One night you'd be looking and you'd say, geez, this kid dominates. And then the next night wouldn't play as well.
Fortunately, the Oilers possessed a hockey prodigy in Wayne Gretzky. While Gretzky was rewriting the record books at age 20, Mark was quietly allowed to develop in a supporting role alongside some of the most talented youngsters the game had ever seen.
We were different than any other team in the league at that time. We were new. We played the game differently. Of course, we had Wayne Gretzky, who was a huge draw. It was just a break from the old traditional hockey teams and the way hockey was played back then.
Well, the young breed has taken over.
His first 2 seasons had been spent in the shadow of other Oilers, but in year 3, Mark started to make a name for himself.
Putting on the speed. Messier in across the line. The shot is gone. Boston to Messier. Here's the lead for Messier from Aikman. Messier lucky. Reinhardt. It's a steal. It's gone. Mark Messier's 4th goal of the game.
Messier's built like a rock, but he can skate on top of it. What a combination that is.
People would stand up to make a check on him, and no chance.
Goes behind the net around in front. Mark Messier.
He was like a young racehorse.
25 seconds left in the game. By Messier.
It was Gordie Howe. He had the wicked elbows. He was the toughest good player in the league at that time.
I don't think people realized how good he really was. He can go out and he can just take control of things.
Messier shoots. Gets the rebound. He scores. Mark Messier.
He actually went from like the 4th line wing to a 3rd line to a 1-1A with one of the best center icemen in the world.
Mark's rise to stardom had mirrored the Oilers' rise into the league's elite. But it had not been without pitfalls. In the 1982 playoffs, the Los Angeles Kings upset Edmonton in the first round. The following season, they made it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, but a 4-game sweep at the hands of the New York Islanders left the Oilers with their first real taste of adversity.
From the baby Oilers, it didn't take long to become, all kinds of things written about us that we didn't have enough character, didn't have the determination, didn't have the guts, didn't have what it took to be winners.
There was only one way to answer the critics, with a championship. In the 1984 season, he brought new dedication to the pursuit of the Stanley Cup.
You could see it in his eyes. He was pushing guys a little bit more the next year. All of them pushed. But Mark was the guy that usually stood up and said it when it had to be said in the dressing room.
Mark did whatever it took. If it happened to be a game where Wayne was being checked, he went out and took charge offensively. If Wayne was doing his thing like he did normally, Mark would be a physical force. The point I'm trying to make is that he made a commitment to just wanting to win.
Blitzing through the regular season, the Oilers made it back to the finals for a rematch with an Islander team that was gunning for a 5th consecutive Stanley Cup.
We were expected to win. And we knew we could win, but when a team has won 4 straight cups, they just knew how to win. They knew how to win. We weren't quite sure if we knew how to win.
Grant Fuhr's acrobatics helped Edmonton to a split of the first 2 games. But returning home for Game 3, Messier knew the Oilers were still playing Islander hockey.
Good evening, everyone. So now we're down to a best-of-3 of 5 series for the Stanley Cup. And if home ice is to be an advantage, then with the next 3 games here, you would have to say the Oilers are in good shape. But when you're up against the New York Islanders, I'm not sure home ice counts for anything. Gillies to the side of the net. To Gillies again. Gillies, his second of the night.
Nearing the game's midway point, Edmonton trailed 2-1. But more importantly, for all their offensive firepower, the Oilers were being completely suffocated.
You can only count on Gretz for so much, and we needed somebody else because they were checking Gretz very well. And that's something that we were all looking for, and looking for someone to follow.
Now back in for Clancy. Brent Sutter had it knocked away on the blue line. Wheeling away is Messier. Messier, beautiful!
That was the goal.
It was a real typical Oiler goal. Through the middle, through the defenseman, and a goal, you know what I mean? And I think it just gave the rest of the guys in the team confidence that, hey, we can do this against this team too.
Gretzky got it in front. A
going on, Oiler hockey was there to stay, and it really took our team to a level of confidence that we never looked back.
Messier's goal keyed a 7-2 rout in Game 3, and with Mark playing like a man possessed, the rest of the series would never be in doubt.
Laid it up off the boards. It might come back outside the line, and Messier is going after it. Messier is going in. The crowd starting to roar a little louder now. Folks, there's a new punch on the block. The Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers have won the Stanley Cup.
The Oilers were always a good hockey club, but until they won the cup, they never become a great hockey club.
This city will never be the same. Never be the same.
It was incredible. Watching the Stanley Cup being hoisted, I don't know how many times as a youth, when we finally broke through, was so incredible for so many reasons.
Mark Messier, number 11, winner of the Conn Smythe Trophy as the most valuable player in the playoffs. There he is.
God, my mother, I went to my mother's place before I went to Long Island. I asked her what she thought about the series, and usually she doesn't say too much, but she said, I can feel it in my blood, and, that's all I needed to hear.
The mention of Mark's mother may have seemed out of place in his Conn Smythe acceptance speech, but for Messier it couldn't have been more appropriate, since his family played such an important role in his life. But by now Mark had developed another family in the Edmonton Oilers. The team's core had developed bonds on and off the ice, and together they stood atop the hockey world.
Every team is different, every team has different characters, but that group of guys just seemed to have just incredible energy wherever we went together, and really good humor from everybody. Even before big games, we seemed to find a way to keep it loose.
This is what it takes to win the Stanley Cup.
These guys, you sit down and have dinner with them, it was a riot. I mean, there was nothing that wasn't humorous. They were even intense in their fun. I mean, they played hard, and they played hard off the ice.
You guys, when you're looking forward to go on the road so you guys can get closer together, and it's this team? It doesn't matter if we're at home or on the road or on the moon. It's true. This team is closer than any other team in professional sports will ever be.
Somebody, who wants to wear this? Fun. The guy gets a $1,000 bonus if he wears this. Really?
They were married to each other. They spent more time, off the ice and on the ice together than they did with anyone else. That team was really their family.
When guys scored a hat trick or if a guy broke a record, the whole team and every guy on the ice was as happy as the guy who accomplished it. If you remember my 50th goal in 39 games, Mark, if you looked at the footage, you wouldn't know if I scored the goal or Mark scored the goal. He was just as happy.
And together, they would dominate the sport.
Unbelievable. How did he know Gretzky was there?
Winning the Cup 3 times in the next 4 years, the Oilers built a dynasty.
You're looking at a superb hockey machine. To a man. They've done their job very, very well.
Yeah, they knew that they were the best team. They seemed to know that they were going to do exactly what they wanted to do when they wanted to do it.
Get a hard shot, boys. Don't rebound up there. No. Come on, Moger. It's your turn for you, guy. That's it.
Don't lose any.
Win every shift.
And at the center of it all was Messier, whose spirit made him perhaps the team's most important member, if not its most prolific.
With Mark, he wanted to win every game. That's all he ever thought about. He never thought about not winning or somebody's going to beat us. It was, we're going to go into this thing and we're going to win it.
And he brought the cup over and said, look, Dad, what we have once more. There he is.
In 1988, the Oilers swept away the Boston Bruins for their 4th cup, and it seemed the reign might go on forever.
Next
we were playing golf at the Edmonton Country Club, and he got a phone on somebody's cell phone that Wayne had been traded. I mean, he just really couldn't believe that they would do that. You know, it was just said it was wrong.
Promise, Miss, I wouldn't do this.
It was tough. Not only is it tough from a personal standpoint, but because of how much fun we were having playing the game. But we knew when Wayne was traded that obviously it was the end of a pretty good ride for sure.
Gretzky's sudden departure to Los Angeles was a shock that Messier's Oilers took the entire season to recover from. And when the two teams met in the playoffs' first round, the Kings dethroned the defending champions.
It took a bit of the heart out of them that year. But then after that, it was another new challenge. Hey, what better way of tackling another challenge than trying to win without Wayne?
The Oilers were now Mark Messier's team. With Gretzky and Paul Coffey gone more than ever, Edmonton's fortunes rested with him.
He took full command of that hockey club. I don't think I've ever seen any of the leaders that I've ever had in hockey club do it as well as Mark did that particular year.
On the ice, he had never been better, scoring a career-high 129 points and winning his first Most Valuable Player award.
So there's Messier in front. He scores! Mark Messier.
In the playoffs, he helped rally the team to victory after being 3-1 down against Winnipeg. Trailing Chicago 2-1 in the conference finals, the Oilers' captain took control in Game 4.
The first thing he said, you know, we can't take any penalties tonight. We got to be really conscientious. First shift, he goes out there. The referee throws up his hand. Mess goes in the box. Kill off the penalty, comes out of the box, picks up the puck.
Messier racing after it. Wilson trying to cut him off. Messier scores!
A couple shifts later, ran someone else over in the box. He went out, he came.
Messier races in after it. His shot hits the side of the net in front of the goal. They score!
Physically, offensively, it was spectacular.
To Messier, going in alone. Messier scores!
He was not going to be beaten. I mean, and we did everything. But he just grabbed that team and the abuse that he went through, but he wouldn't stop.
Leading the Oilers back to the finals, Messier set the tone before the series even started.
We're having our meeting with the team, and Mark stands up and says, listen, we're the underdogs in this series, and we love it. He said, we are going to win this series going away because we're supposed to be the underdogs.
And Mark's words rang true. Surprising the Bruins in 5 games, he scored his most unexpected triumph.
The Oilers are going to win another Stanley Cup here in Boston. You can see it on the face of Mark Messier. This one is as sweet as the other 4. Maybe a little bit sweeter.
Great deal of input, and that's Coach Bull's time right there. And the greatest player.
Mess, the first time you've accepted the trophy must be a great moment.
Well, it was funny, we were talking before the game that Kevin and I are roommates, and we said, well, let's go there and win this one for Gretz, and if he's watching, this one's for you, big guy.
Mark's 5th championship in 7 years put the exclamation point on a glorious career in Edmonton. He had simply done it all in an Oilers uniform. In a game of hockey, he was now a figure of mythic proportions, but one who had outgrown the city of Edmonton, both professionally and financially. And even as the Oilers defended their championship the following season, Mark had begun to dream of new challenges.
You know, I'd been thinking about it probably a little bit that year, and then we ended up losing to Minnesota in the semis, and I think that last playoff game, I pretty well knew that was my last game as an Oiler.
And in the summer of 1991, Mark had his sights set on New York.
It seemed to be the only place that I really could envision myself coming to, for all the reasons, for the challenge of it, for playing for the original 6 team, living in the city. Just the whole thing seemed to be exactly what I wanted.
Now Hockey Jim, and in Edmonton, the sale continues. In New York, hope continues. A trade involving one of hockey's top players. The New York Rangers acquiring 30-year-old Mark Messier, one of the last pieces of the Edmonton dynasty.
Mark had gotten his wish. He was now a Ranger. And for a hockey player that had always relished challenges, there could be no greater place to play.
to me, Mark at that time was best player in the league, and there wouldn't be anybody that could do a better job in New York than him. I told Smithy, Neil Smith, that this was the guy who was going to win the Stanley Cup for him.
New York City. Nothing in the world compares to the Big Apple. It can intimidate the strong and devour the weak. But Mark Messier was a different breed.
We were kids, I guess 19 years old, and we were pulling into Manhattan there, and we're all kind of looking out the window of the bus, looking at all the big buildings, and Mark goes, the Big Apple, and all I want is just a little bite out of it.
Arriving in New York as a 30-year-old veteran, the stakes were now much higher.
I expected the absolute worst and I expected the absolute best, and so I just basically wanted to come in there and let things turn over and roll how they naturally would. But more importantly, just try to be myself.
5-time Stanley Cup champion, wearing uniform number 11, Mark Messier.
Messier had already won more Stanley Cups than the Rangers had in their 65-year history. It was a franchise mired in frustration. His job was to transform the Rangers into winners and wipe out generations of disappointment.
When he first came, I know a lot of it was because jinxes in 54 years or 52 at the time or whatever. It was like taboo to talk about the cup. Oh, don't talk about it, you know. He came in, he's like, yeah, talk about it, we want it, you know. That's what it's all about.
The lesson began from day one.
Messier with a quick snapshot, and he scores! Rebound Messier comes around in front, he scores! And the Rangers win!
At 43 seconds of overtime, the Rangers win it 5-4.
Mark Messier breezes by Shodin and shoots, he scores!
With the NHL's top record in 91-92, the Rangers earned the President's Trophy, giving New York fans reason to believe that this really could be the year to end the drought. A 7-game playoff win over New Jersey fueled the frenzy.
Messier one-on-one against Weinrich. Messier cuts in, he's got it, he scores! Steal by Messier, moving it on Terreri, he scores! Messier's second short-handed goal of the game, and it's 5-3. Ending ovation at the Garden.
Stanley Cup fever had swept over New York, but it was premature. The Pittsburgh Penguins ended the Rangers season.
Rasso plays the puck. Francis trying to clear. Gets it to Puckett, looking at the empty net. That's it!
Once again, their season had ended in frustration. And now, Messier was part of the Rangers' history of playoff failure.
The Rangers season, a great regular season, is coming to a sad close.
Despite the early exit from the playoffs, Messier's first season in New York was a major success, culminating with his second Hart Trophy as league MVP. Mark embraced New York. The city revealed another aspect of his personality. Lending his time to children and charities, Mark wanted nothing more than to give New York hockey fans the ultimate gift.
To all the fans of New York who've waited so patiently for a Stanley Cup, we're going to try to bring it home. Thank you all.
But high expectations came crashing down the next season, and Messier's Rangers lived out a New York nightmare. A public conflict with Roger Nielsen preceded the firing of the popular coach, and Messier was held responsible. The Rangers collapsed in the stretch as the media and the fans turned on the team.
It's just been a miserable time for the New York Rangers.
Mark, are you embarrassed to be in a position where the team might fall into last place tonight if you lose to the Flyers?
Well, I think, that's a tough question.
His career reached an all-time low when he missed the Stanley Cup playoffs for the first time. As captain, Messier took the brunt of the criticism.
I can remember him coming home because I was living with him, and he came home. There was another particularly kind of not great article in the paper, and we started talking, and I just broke down and started crying. And he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, I can't stand this anymore. And he said, "Look, it doesn't bother me. Those guys are doing their job, and I'm going to do my job, and things are going to come around, and everything's okay." So he said, "You just have to, it's all part of the game."
Coming off such disappointment, Messier could have entered the 1993-94 season discouraged. But Mike Keenan was now the head coach, and he brought with him a sense of order.
To be very honest with you, I felt it the first few days of training camp. Our whole team went over to England and played in the Mustard Cup or whatever it was. The French's Cup.
Messier with it. Gardner shoots, he scores!
And we ended up winning it and just built momentum from that day on.
Messier races to the puck. Messier gets there. Messier's in. He scores! On a beautiful backhander! Leach and Zubal play the points. Here comes Messier again. He scores! Mark Messier!
The Rangers went on to win 52 games and another President's Trophy. But as the playoffs approached, New York fans were skeptical.
It's always the history of the Rangers. Boy, this is something else. What a team. They made some nice deals at the trade deadline. They're at the top of their game, but something's going to happen.
This, however, was a different Ranger team. Messier was now surrounded with a proven cast of veterans, many of whom he'd won with before. And in the first 2 rounds, Mark was bursting with confidence.
Blocked by Anderson. Here comes Messier. Messier in on the cut. He scores! That's blocked. Here comes Messier. Messier out in front. Messier scores! Messier gets to it. Messier with it. Messier scores! They love it in Rangerland.
Blowing away the Islanders and Capitals, the Rangers moved on to a conference final showdown with the New Jersey Devils.
The NHL season down to the final 4 teams, and clearly the New York Rangers are the team to beat for the Stanley Cup.
The underdog Devils managed a split of the first 4 games. And in Game 5, they took command of the series.
It's a 2-on-1 the other way. John McClain to Nichols scores! Bernie Nichols, power play goal. It's a 2-on-1 with Chorski. Across it goes. Chorski all kinds of time. He scores! Tom Chorski makes it 4-0. And the exit is on here at Madison Square Garden in what might be the final game of the season here in New York.
Leaving the ice down 3 games to 2, Messier and the Rangers were 60 minutes away from another postseason heartbreak.
Rangers are really in a bind here.
We had definitely lost momentum in that series. We needed a way to find our confidence, which we had displayed all year.
Bill Clement, the Rangers are not done yet.
No, they're not done, Gary, but they're a hurting bunch. They are hurt physically, they are hurting emotionally.
You know, the doomsayers, the naysayers are there and saying the jinx will continue, and Mark once again seized the moment.
I didn't think much of it other than the fact that I wanted the players to know that I really believed in the team, that we could go there and win.
This was headlines on all the sports sections in New York. Mark Messier said, "We will win Game 6.
Obviously, when I saw the headlines smashed with, I'm going to guarantee it win, I kind of wanted to roll back into the covers and say, call it a day.
There's something about Mark Messier. It's almost as if he was genetically programmed to handle big situations. Well, it doesn't get bigger than this.
Mark's guarantee had raised the stakes of a game that was already New York's most important contest in decades. But as Game 6 began, it was the Devils who came out flying.
Saved by Richter, rebound, saved by Richter on Bobby Carpenter. Even when the Ranger, look at this. McLean, save made by Richter. Rangers lug out. The ice is slanted towards Mike Richter.
You know, literally, they were all over us.
Niedermeyer centering. Look out, score! It went off a Ranger stick.
You know, I'm going, come on, guys.
More and more each game. Bobby holding, great shot, rebound, loose, shot, deflected by Doug Lidstern, a penalty coming up with the Rangers. Center, Niedermeyer, scores! And the New York Rangers will hear the chant of 1940 from the Devils fans as they head out.
They definitely felt that this is their chance to close it out. They were at home, they were riding a high. They completely overwhelmed us.
The second period brought more of the same.
Back to the point. Devils hold it in. Shot wide of the net by Tommy Avalon. Again, the save on Bobby Carpenter's shot. Chorski hit the post! And Mike Richter's holding the fort right now for the Rangers. Stevens drops it. Shot Tommy Avalon. That hit the Devil. That puck was blocked by Tom Chorski, or it would have been a goal.
You're sitting there saying, well, if this is it, what are we going to say? Now we've had such a wonderful year once again and not been able to do it.
As time wound down in the second period, the Rangers were still searching for a glimmer of hope.
Off wraparound, save Brodeur. Guerin the puck. Messier moves in. Mike Messier comes. Rangers need one desperately. Kovalev all alone. Kovalev shot. He scores. They got one.
Yep, Neil Smith. There is life. There is life.
The Rangers had temporarily stolen New Jersey's thunder. But as the final 20 minutes began, New York was still in desperate need of a hero.
Brian Leach stick handles past Carpenter. Headman's on the right wing to Kovalev. Moving it over the devil eye, cuts to the slot, feeds Messier, backhands, he scores! Messier has tied it at 2 with 17-12 to go in the third period.
Just throw the clicker away. You got all you'll need right here.
I didn't feel any added pressure because of the comments or anything like that. If you let those things enter your mind, I think they become really heavy. So I was able just to kind of release it all and just play the game.
Well, here comes the Messier line again. It's like a finely honed machine right now.
We're in a 4-on-4, remember. Leach moving it in. Leach drops it. Kovalev again. Save Brodeur. Rebound. Score! Mark Messier gets his second goal. The Rangers lead 3-2.
Are you the real Mark Messier? Yes, I am.
I mean, it was just, I still get goosebumps just thinking about it. I mean, it was a tremendously important game for us in terms of our drive to win that Stanley Cup, and I think that, you know, Mark took it upon himself.
Messier's show-stopping performance stunned the disbelieving Devils. Now all that remained was the final curtain call.
John McLean center. For the empty net, Mark Messier. Do you believe it? Do you believe it? He said we will win Game 6. He has just picked up the hat trick.
I think I said something before the game about him being genetically perfect for this kind of situation. Somehow, Mark Messier becomes a larger-than-life person when the situation calls for and warrants it.
It was amazing. He amazed me. It was amazing. The whole deal.
The New York Rangers have beaten the Devils 4-2.
I was laughing before the puck went in. I just went, wow. To score the game winner and get a hat trick in the process is just, that's the stuff that myths are made of.
The Devils were so close, and now they are so far.
You know, we took that we believed we could win awful seriously. We believed it ourselves, but I mean, 3 goals and assists, there's just nothing else to say.
Mark's heroics set the stage for a deciding Game 7, which ended dramatically in double overtime.
Matto behind the net, swings it in front, he scores! Matto! The Rangers are headed to the finals!
New York was one step away from its first Stanley Cup in 54 years. With Captain Mark Messier at the helm, Ranger fever raged out of control.
Let's go Rangers!
The cup, my kingdom for the cup. That's the idea for the Rangers right now. The final quest for the cup begins tonight.
Hey, there's a new religion in town. Some people think the Messiah has come. Others think the Messiah is coming. But we know the Messiah is here, leading us to the promised land. Here he is, the Messiah! Messiah! The promised land! The promised land! Yeah!
I have to say it was probably the most incredible couple days I've experienced as a player, but I just could feel the whole thing starting to roll, the proverbial snowball rolling down the hill, getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Following Messier's lead, they jumped all over their finals opponents, the Vancouver Canucks.
Messier pushes the puck up, forced him out of the net. Rebound, score! Glenn Anderson! Brave tipped it in. Kovalev is in. Kovalev onside. The shot, he scores! Here he goes. Saved by Richter. Save made. Rebound shot, score! Brian Leach!
And the Rangers win. The New York Rangers will head home with a chance to win the Stanley Cup.
jumping out to a 3-1 series lead, the Rangers seemed poised to finish their historic quest at home.
The media, the fans, everywhere. This is a done deal to people. They have already won.
But the celebration didn't happen, and Messier could only watch as Vancouver wrestled the momentum from the Rangers' grasp.
3-on-2 for the moment. Rangers get back. Shot. Score! One save made. Rick the rebound. Score! And the Vancouver Canucks celebrate. And the Stanley Cup final is still up for grabs.
They should have won it 4 straight. They were the best team in the first 4 games. And then things happened. Vancouver started to pound the Rangers, physically pound them. And all of a sudden it was a 7-game series.
And this, my friends, is going to go to the ultimate game in hockey.
Of course, now you're in a total panic mentally that could this possibly happen? Could we possibly lose? How could this doesn't happen?
People will be talking about a collapse. And if they are to break the 54-year jinx, they will do it on home ice.
The Rangers' curse seemed to be at work once again. And as he returned to New York, one thing was clear. Mark Messier was 1 game away from either the glorious ending to a 54-year journey or the most crushing defeat of his career.
Normally when you go into the 7th game of the Stanley Cup, you'll get at least a few fans that'll come up to you and say, no matter what happens in this game, you know, you guys have had a great season, but nobody said that in New York. And that pressure was heaped largely on the shoulders of Mark.
It was a game and a day he had been preparing for his entire life.
I remember getting out of the car to come to the game, and they had police from 7th Avenue to 8th Avenue all along 33rd Street, about 8 deep. And when I got out of the car, all I could see was a sea of blue. And it was just an incredible experience. There was people outside. It was a beautiful day. It was just sometimes there were moments I'll never forget.
It's a 1-game shot. The fans are standing already and ready. Everybody wants it.
Mark's role throughout all of this has always been that everyone looks over and Mark says, don't worry about it. Just play your game. We're going to win this. Don't worry. We're going to get through this.
Messier squeezing by. Messier coming in there in the slot area. Here's Leach. Scores! Leach! A brilliant passing play by Messier. Zuma with Leach finishing.
For people who believe in astrology, for people who believe in tarot cards or whatever you believe in, if you're on the Rangers, you believe in Messier.
When there's a game that has to be won, you know, he puts it upon himself to be the guy to carry the torch, the guy to lead the team across the line.
Noonan in front, backhand shot, saved, good around shot by Noonan, saved, rebound, score! Messier!
One of the things that was really lacking when I came to New York is that nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to get the expectations up too high in case they were let down. But if your expectations aren't high, then you're never going to try to achieve what you want.
The 33-year-old Mark Messier reacting like the 9 or 10-year-old used to in youth hockey.
In 1991, he came to New York to face hockey's ultimate challenge. 3 years later, as the final seconds ticked away from Game 7, he had delivered beyond the Rangers' wildest dreams.
Here it is. The waiting is over. The New York Rangers are the Stanley Cup champions. And this one will last a lifetime. No more curses. No more 1940. It's gone. Congratulations, Rangers. The 1994 New York Rangers have done it.
When you saw his facial expression, you could see all that pressure just leaving. I mean, he made it. He did it in New York. How many people have come to New York and made it work?
He was brought here to win a Stanley Cup. His mission is complete.
The look on his face, I think, was the look of, we did it. Not I did it. Not I got to New York and I did it. I got the Rangers a cup. His was, we did it. We did it. Isn't this great? Because he wanted so bad for us to do it.
Well, New York, after 54 years, your long wait is over.
get the Stanley Cup.
It's a little over 35 pounds, but it's like a feather now when you see the next move. Here he goes, Mark Messier, and the Stanley Cup champions, the New York Rangers.
He's looking up at his family right now saying, I can't believe it.
It was an incredible year from, like I say, right from the French's Cup to the Stanley Cup final. I mean, we started off with winning the Cup and we ended it winning the Cup, and it was incredible.
He was brought here to deliver the cup, and when it happened, I think deep down inside he felt that, you know, here he had reached the ultimate. He had done what he had set out to do.
For me, it was about winning the Cup, and that, I didn't care if anything happened after that. And once we had won that Cup, the rest was all just a blast.
Mark had conquered his greatest challenge. And in the days that followed, he shared that triumph with an adoring New York.
He had it one time right outside of his brownstone or whatever in New York, just on the street, and he was sitting on the steps, and people would just walk by, and it was absolutely incredible. They were just like, this just doesn't happen in pro sports.
I said at the press conference when we got him in Montreal, there'll be something different about the logo when he left. He's definitely already done that. There's something different about the Ranger logo when you look at it now. You see a stronger organization, you see a winning organization.
When it comes to his teammates and the guys within our hockey family, he's the most caring guy. He makes a point of never forgetting anyone.
Just like to say, on behalf of my teammates and the entire organization, thank you to all our trainers who worked long, more hours than we did throughout the year.
You'd be on a road trip somewhere and the team would go and he'd invite us along too. He knows what the word team means.
We love you, New York.
I think it starts with family, and I still think you have to put enough time in to get to know where a guy's from and how many kids he has, and I think that eventually will build a bond where you care enough about each other when times get tough.
Growing up, the value of a strong family was ingrained upon Mark. He brought that strength into every locker room he entered, and today the bonds of his own family are stronger than ever.
How he's maintained his roots and how strong he is about family. I mean, it always seems to stay in his mind that the family's always number one.
Contact is still, after every game, Mark still talks to my dad, talks to my mom, talks to Paul.
When you see a player like Mark Messier, a great player who's won the Stanley Cups he has, bring his family to the game and his mom and dad, I think it reminds us that we should all do that, and we can all do that.
Now entering the twilight of his career, Mark has amassed personal numbers that are staggering. 1,500 career points, 6 Stanley Cups, and 3 Canada Cup championships. But in the end, it will be less the statistics and more the spirit that will define the Messier legacy.
He shoots, he scores! Mark Messier, number 500, and it's a hat trick! What a night for Mark Messier!
When GMs and coaches are talking, the statement that's always heard is, well, he'll be okay in your team. You have Mark Messier.
If I get it to you, get over here, go harder around with it. Escape, big boy, way to escape, big boy. Way to take it to the net, way to get it to the net. That's perfect, keep getting it at the net.
The times that I've been in the same dressing room are Canada Cup times, or World Cup times, and he's short, he's sweet, he's right to the point, and what he says is right there.
I see him step on the ice and I'm intimidated. He's got skill, toughness, he's two-way, he's a leader. I think over the past decade, to me, he's been the ultimate player.
I see and hear sometimes people say, you know, in future years, 10 years from now, get someone else to come in and be the captain and do it. You're not going to find a Mark Messier. There's only one Mark Messier. I don't care where you look, what sport you look in. There's no one that can do what he can do.
Action.
Messier on the breakaway. Messier scores!
He went through a scenario that looked impossible, and he survived it. And I think
Your mouth gets tired.
show up on time next time.
2 minutes.
What are you going to think about maybe 20 years from now when you remember playing with Mark? Whoa! Can you hold that?
Gretzky to Mark Messier. Score!
Great player. Great.
Doctor, give me some news.
Is Messier, he's got it, he shoots, he scores! Mark Messier with a hat trick!
Goal 2, Mark 3.
Marlon Brando. One take.
Would come in after the center and bring his stick from above down for the draw and just clunk the guy right on top of the head. And he'd look and sorry.
I would have to say what he always told me, Kev, you got to live every day like it's your last and have some fun doing it.
1-on-1, take 8, roll 5. More. Good. Oh.